Welcome back to Global War 1939. We just finished off round 10. So let's take a look here. All right, so for the Germans, they just moved one step closer to the new Russian capital. Um, on round 11, that's when this battle would take place. Russia, just on their turn, purchased two new units. They only had $7. So they were just their elite guard and another rocket. Um, so once this battle takes, the Germans will be going with these three units, and an airborne, and these three infantry in Moscow. They'll just bunch of infantry will just move ahead just to prevent partisans. And so after that battle, that should be the last of the Russians. On their last turn, they just collected $4. So they're pretty much done, which they have been for quite the last few turns. Once Moscow falls, it's extremely difficult for the Russians to get back in the game. Over here in France, in Normandy, the British and the Americans had a huge stack of military units that were trying to get ready to push forward into Paris and onward. They just got hemmed down. Even though combined they had a huge army, but when they would attack, they have to attack separately, which the Germans just had too much defending. So when the Germans attacked, it was a huge battle. The Germans went down to the very last unit. They just, over the course of the whole battle, it was about 11 rounds of combat total, and the Germans retreated. So technically, it is a loss for the Germans. They retreated with one Tiger tank, and the Americans were left with 6 medium tanks, and the British with one fighter. Everything else got lost. However, when you're on Europe, the German ability to reproduce new units, their production is so large, they can instantly drop a new army. So losing that huge army for Germany wasn't that big a deal. They pretty much already replaced it. The fleet battle in Sea Zone 28, as you can tell, went in the favor of the Germans. Yes, they lost pretty much all their support vessels. They're just left with one battleship, 3 coastal battleships, and 3 cruisers. This battleship is actually damaged twice. I just forgot to put the markers on. So they would need to find a port to repair that, which there's plenty of them to find. The Germans came down with 2 transports offloaded for units to engage in the Normandy battle. The British bombers came out and sunk those 2 transports, which at this point in the game, that really doesn't matter. What the big deal was is that the Anglo-American fleet is now gone. All they have now, the Americans still got 3 destroyers. The British just purchased 4, and the Canada purchased 1. So they have the British got 5 destroyers. The Americans only have 3 in the Atlantic to face off against all this. So the Battle of the Atlantic has definitely swung back in the Germans' favor away from the UK. Down in Africa, the 3 light tanks and the 2 cavalry came down, and so basically the tanks blitzed through this territory, attacked the 3 units here. They did bring on their bomber to help out. It was a pretty close call. The Italians came out victorious with only losing 2 light tanks. Same thing here, 2 cavalry versus 1 infantry, and this is only one round of combat. The Italians rolled a 2, and then the South African infantry rolled a 1. And then here the Italians just used their air transport, drop off a paratrooper as a walk-on. So this is another UK country now out of the game. And then for these two territories over here on this next turn, the Italians will pick up their air transport, drop them off here, and this German transport will come down and take out this. So Africa will be completely in control of the Axis at that point. If you remember a couple turns ago, the Germans brought down 16 medium tanks. The tanks went ahead and made the attack, not trying to win, just trying to soften up the British in Cairo. The Germans had to retreat. They retreated with 3 medium armor, and the British in Cairo went ahead and attacked them. So they're not completely surrounded, closing off the canal. However, then the Italians made their move into Cairo. Another huge battle that took about 7 or 8 rounds of combat, but the Italians were victorious. As you can see, they still got their 3 elite infantry, 3 medium tanks, 3 heavy artillery, so they won that quite decisively. So at this point, the UK on the European side is just left with Labrador and their home island. Over in Asia, Japan made another breakthrough, closing off the Burma Road again. I was actually surprised how quickly, if you remember a couple turns ago, Japan was pretty thinned out here after a huge battle that the FEC won. But I was surprised how quickly the Japanese were able to reinforce this area with new units and push FEC back. But that's the power of having a big production pool, having a lot of money. Right now, Japan is, before bonuses, they're making $98. So once you add on those bonuses, they're well over 100. And at this point, FEC is only making 8. So $8 versus 100, you're probably not going to win that war. Down here in Australia, they were able to break through. The past couple turns, they've been buying fighters to attack the destroyers over here. So they attacked with 4 fighters. They've taken on 4 destroyers. Anzac won that battle, only losing 1 fighter in the process. So the blockade of their home port is now lifted, freeing them up to certainly get some more vessels in the water. But I'm not sure. That's certainly not going to be the turning point in the Pacific, as the Japanese Americans had their big battle of the Navy determining the fate of the Pacific Ocean. Japan won this battle. So right now they got 8 cruisers in Sea Zone 120, and they also have this fleet as well. They lost their escort carriers. All their support vessels are all gone. Losing a couple fighters to the American aircraft carriers. All these battleships are all hit. So all the Amatos got 2 hits each, and these 4 got 1. So they're going to have to go back to a friendly port to repair those, which is not too bad. Carolina Islands is right there, or they could go back to their home country. So not that big a deal. China's been completely stifled out now. They just had 1 infantry left, where the Japanese came in and took care of that pretty quickly. So over the next 2 turns, they're probably not even going to add any more new units. They don't really need to. The next 2 turns, they'll march here and then come in and take out FEC capital. And then the turn after, take out all these 4, which would just essentially be walk-ons. So within the next 3 turns, India will be completely out of the game. And over here, what the Japanese are going to do, once they repair their battleships, they're going to head straight for Sea Zone 133 and essentially blockade it, preventing the Americans from really producing anything. Yes, the Americans are still making over $100, but are they really, with all these battleships and carriers, even without support vessels, even if you drop 10 cruisers or 10 destroyers, they certainly don't have enough money to make 10 battleships all at once. So as soon as they produce a new unit, the sea zone will become hostile right away, and they'll have to fight, probably losing, essentially wasting all that income. So the only way around it, they'll have to produce over here, and then sail around the Panama Canal to make an attack. But the Japanese would clearly see that coming and produce. At this point, they don't really have any more enemies, so them spending money on material that they don't really need, they can easily do that. So they can drop, you know, 10 destroyers a turn and just sail them over. So eventually, at some point, they'll have, 20, 30 destroyers along with all these battleships. You're probably not going to get rid of that blockade. On the last purchase, Japan did purchase 6 more transports, 2 more battleships, and a couple of land-based units. So that combined with the 3 they have here, the 4 transports they have here, these transports are going to go back to Japan, and they'll just load up. So they got about 13 transports. They'll load all that up and make a run for Australia, as these transports really have nothing else to do. The Japanese will eventually get a ship up into this convoy box. The Americans being convoyed for 10 here. Over in the Atlantic, the Italians do have a couple of destroyers. So they're going to be tasked with blockading all these convoy boxes. At that point, Britain over here will only be making $11 a turn, making Canada richer than Great Britain. And then the German Navy, what their plan would be at this point, once this Normandy gets killed, which obviously will happen, the stern. They got no way to escape, no way to reinforce, so that will go. The German battleship cruiser will probably hang out in Sea Zone 27, forcing the Americans to build warships and not army-based units and transports, and fight the Germans in the open sea before they can rebuild their transport fleet and start trying to make landings again. So that'll be a couple turns down the road. At this point, Germany doesn't need any more army-based units, so they'll solely focus all their income, which is roughly $130 after bonuses, into their Navy and Air Force. So after turn 11, their purchase option would be 13 subs and then the rest in bombers. And they would station the bombers in Reims with the air base there. Then the bombers, at that point, they'll probably have 5 or 6. They already have 2, but they'll probably up to 5 or 6. They can reach in the Sea Zone 21 and get back, no issues. So any fleet that Canada purchased, they'll just send over the bombers to sink it. And then over 2 turns of purchases, Germany would have, purchase 13 subs each for the next 2 turns, station them in Sea Zone 17, and because of that naval base that they bought, they're able to reach any part of the English coastline. So again, any vessels that Britain do buy with their $11 will be quickly sunk by 26 subs. So you're probably not going to get away with, and even the option to buy planes to take on the Navy, if you want to do it that way, with the subs, that's kind of null and void. And then after that, after those 2 turns of purchases of just subs, then they'll spend 2 turns of building just transports. So they'll end up with having 26 transports, and then make a run for Great Britain. So that would be essentially the German plan over the next 5 turns. And then the Italians, at this point, they have nothing to do Again, they'll just buy naval-based units, sail them over to the Atlantic, or probably build up a Navy transport fleet and come take out Brazil. That would probably be their next objective. Of course, that's not going to happen over one turn. That'll be over the next 5 turns. And then South America will be in the hands of the Italians. So that would be their plan, their objective. And of course, FEC would be out of the game. Britain will be effectively out of the game. Australia is really too weak to wage war, and they'll just leave the Americans. And at that point, the Axis will just outproduce them, which they kind of already are right now. The income count at this point, Russia's making $4. Great Britain right now does have 35, but over the next little bit, once those convoy boxes really hit, they'll be down to 11. Canada's at 14. India right now has 8. Australia has 8. China's completely gone. And the US right now has 111. Now, this is income. There are natural income bonuses and any money that they save from the last round. Japan right now is 115. Germany has 129. And Italy has 48. So they're certainly well outproducing the Allies. So at this point, we do meet condition 1 to end the game. The Axis do hold 12 victory cities after 10 turns. So at this point, we're just going to call the game right here. I can't see the Allies mounting any kind of comeback to actually swing the game back in their favor. Even if you give them another 10, 20 turns, the Axis just make way too much money. They're just going to have the more time you give them, the bigger their army is going to get. It's just going to be impossible. So we're going to sign the armistice to end the war, and that will be the game. But out of all the games that I've played, this is probably the most decisive ending. Usually, in the previous games, the British or the U.S. still had a fighting chance. You still see, okay, there might still be a path forward, but at the end of this one, I can't see how they're going to mount any kind of comeback, especially when pretty much all of Europe outside of the UK islands, all of Asia, all of Africa is now under Axis control. All right, well, thank you for watching and have a great day.